It's Jack Pepper here, saying hello and welcome. I'm a composer, radio presenter and author, and I'm asking the classical questions here on Classeek 15. This is the podcast home for advice on how to make a career in classical music. Next, we're exploring life as a travelling soloist. How do you balance a punishing travel schedule with planning, practice, writing and numerous other creative projects? Well, to answer that, we have cellist Steven Isserlis. John Tavener and Thomas Adès are among the composers to have written for him, and his latest recording release, Music of the Angels, presents a programme of cello concertos, sonatas and quintets by Boccherini. That's available on Hyperion. And away from playing, Steven has written 2 books for children exploring the lives of classical composers, not to mention writing 3 stories that have been set to music by the Oscar-winning composer Anne Dudley. Well, in this chat we'll cover book writing, air travel and more. But I began by asking Steven if there's an aspect of his career he finds most difficult, even to this day.
Travelling. Well, there's a huge amount of things. Like I went to Australia a few weeks ago, which was a ridiculous schedule anyway. I don't know why. We just crammed it in. It was only going to be a week. And I was 38 hours delayed, my flight. Everything went wrong. It was unbelievable. So in the end, I arrived on Tuesday evening in Melbourne and had to rehearse Wednesday lunchtime and play Thursday evening, which is just mad. And actually this week, for some reason my travels got messed up again, and I'm arriving in China on Thursday and playing on Friday, which I said to my agents, I don't want to do that sort of schedule ever again.
So how many performances are we talking about in a year, generally?
I don't know, maybe up to 100. I'm not sure. I never count.
Do you count the number of flights?
No. Well, I count the number of frequent flyer miles, yes, assiduously. See what level I'm going to get to.
So how do you strike a balance then when you have offers coming in left, right and centre? How do you know what to say yes to and what to politely decline?
It's difficult. Depends what comes in first, and then sometimes I regret it because something actually more interesting perhaps might come in, and then you have either to see if you can get out of the original date, but if they're upset and you can't, you have to be honourable and stick with it. It's very difficult, and it's a deluge. And suddenly, like for January 2026, I just had 2 cancellations, so I have almost nothing to do that month, which is weird. I mean, hopefully it'll still fill up. And then the last few months have just been possibly the busiest of my life. I've been mad.
And do you build some kind of routine into your days, into your weeks, even when you're in a different place? Do you have a practice routine, some kind of schedule, some kind of stability within all that change?
I try, but it's sometimes impossible. It just depends how much you're travelling, how long you have to get over the jet lag, when you get to a place that's far away, all sorts of things. I try and have my sort of routine on the day of a concert, in that I try and rehearse maybe in the morning, and then have a big lunch, have a rest, get up, listen to the Beatles, and then, very important, drink a cup of coffee half an hour before I go on stage. That's very important. And I get very wound up if it doesn't arrive. But in general, no, I mean, you can't really, each day is different. Like today, I'm in London for basically one day. So I've been rushing around getting my cello mended, my cello case looked at, picking up medication, from the chemist, and all sorts of things, rushing around. And I haven't actually yet practiced, and it's now 6:10 in the evening because I haven't had a cello all day. And that's right. And then I had a breakfast meeting with somebody from Hyperion Records, which was a long meeting, very nice, but very long. So yeah.
And is practice something that you write into the diary then? So it doesn't have to always be at 10 a.m, but you know that you want to get a few hours. Or are you quite happy having a few days away?
No, never. I mean, I've not had more than 3 consecutive days away from the cello since I was 10 years old. I hate days without playing the cello. No, I'm a bit of a workaholic, which is very boring for those around me. But no, I certainly don't write in the diary. I know that most days are going to be focused around practicing and rehearsing. I've just been doing a lot of different repertoire, so, you have to prepare for that. I had the Foray Festival at the Wigmore Hall, which I had to play 12 pieces, 5 consecutive nights. So, but then I was going to Paris to play Haydn concerto and block pieces and a chamber concert with works by Mozart and Brahms. So I worked on that before the Forêt Festival. So during the Forêt Festival, I could completely focus on that repertoire.
What would you say are the most common misunderstandings around practice held by young musicians you work with in a masterclass setting, say? What would you say are the most common mistakes or misunderstandings around practice?
Well, maybe some people think it's got to be unpleasant and painful, which doesn't. I enjoy practicing. It's nice. It's just sort of like having a shower or something. It's nice feeling to get things more as you want them. I do think it's very important not to let your fingers decide how you want to play a piece, i.e. have it in your mind how you want to play the piece before you go to your instrument. And then it saves time, but it also, obviously makes sense. Then you're not practicing, oh, this sounds nice. You don't do that. You are like, a lot of my practice will be for intonation. That's, just keep it technically clean and clear.
You make it sound like quite a joyous, or dare I say, easy process. Is practice ever stressful?
Yeah, if you haven't got enough time and things, or if it goes badly, you can always have bad days, which are really annoying.
How do you deal with that then? If you are stressed or you're having a bad day, what do you do to overcome that?
Well, it depends. I try and think that I've had many, many bad days before and the next day has been okay. So you try and sort of cheer yourself up with that.
And so how does that then work with the added complexity of travel? So you can practice and prepare a piece all you like, but then something can go wrong with the airline or you don't sleep. How do you then deal with that at all?
Well, I'm not a good sleeper these days. I used to be. No, in fact, just now in Sinandali in Georgia, I was giving a recital that was going to be quite stressful anyway. And I think I slept 1 hour the night before. I just couldn't get back to sleep. And I was just trying to think of ways I could kill myself before the recital started. And I was playing the Arpeggione Sonata, which one plays from memory. It was ghastly. It was horrible. That was an extreme example. But the concert was okay. It was a morning concert. I suppose that helped. But of course in Australia I was so tired. But you just lie down and relax as much as you can, even if you can't sleep. And you think to yourself, I've done this before, I can do it again. That's a very important thing to remember.
So if we had a list of travel do's and don'ts for musicians, and particularly musicians just starting out on that circuit, what would you say are the things that you've learned, maybe the hard way over the years, things to keep in mind when you're travelling, things to have with you, things to be wary of? What are the a musician's travel tips?
It's a bit difficult to say because everybody's so different. Everybody has different levels of energy and, needs different amounts of sleep and have different forms of nerves. But I'd say, don't practice too hard, too emotionally on the day of a concert. But again, that's difficult. If you've got a dress rehearsal with an orchestra and you're playing the whole concerto, you can't just play it in a detached way. There's actually a video which I thought was a bit shocking that it was up, of Rostropovich rehearsing Shostakovich Sonata, and I can tell he's not putting anything into it, absolutely on purpose. So he's saving everything up for the evening concert. But somebody put this video up, and I think if Slava had ever seen that, he would have been furious, because it's not him. He's just going through the motions and saving everything. I find that hard to do that extreme, but I always say I'm sort of superstitious. If the rehearsal goes well, then I think the concert will go badly. But then if the rehearsal goes badly, I also think that the concert will go badly.
So do you doubt yourself?
Oh, God, yes.
And doubting what? The ability you think you'll play wrong notes, you doubt your interpretation. What is that doubt?
I think about memory lapses when I'm playing from memory a lot, which is terrible. And I don't know. Because you can never really tell. I can't tell about balance, for instance. I can't tell whether people can hear me or not. And sometimes they can, sometimes apparently they can't enough. You can never really tell how it's coming across to an audience. You might think it's gone really well and people don't enjoy it that much, and vice versa. So, yeah, I think self-doubt is actually very important. My friend Lars Vogt, much missed pianist Lars Vogt, used to say that some performers would come on stage and he'd be bored by the time they reached the centre of the stage because there was no self-doubt. He's so right, as he was about many things.
So how do you learn to use self-doubt? Because that's quite a big thing that you might learn over time. If you're starting out in your career and you feel terrified, you know you've got to make a good impression. What did you find helped you when you were starting out, practically speaking, in dealing with nerves, dealing with doubt?
Well, the thought that you've done it before is very important and you've got through it. That's reassuring. And then often I think, oh yeah, this is scary, but this other occasion, I can think of another one, is going to be even more scary. Somehow I find that comforting. I don't know why, but I do. The only time it didn't work was when I was my second cycle of Bach suites at the Wigmore Hall, and I just couldn't think of anything scarier. So that didn't work. That I was so anxious to, make it work and make it the best I could do.
And it's something that, I'm thinking cello playing is one part of your career, but you've written children's books. You're very passionate about introducing a wider audience to classical music. Do you see all these different strings to your bow, as a compliment or a competition?
It's true I'm not writing any books at the moment because I just don't have time. My schedule at the moment. But no, it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of communicating. I only write about music. Almost only write about music.
And it's certainly something I find in writing, and radio feeds the composer in me. Did writing those children's books feed the player in you? Do you play differently for the writing?
I wouldn't say that necessarily, but it's nice that I know so many stories because I had to read them about the composers. It's fun to talk about. I'm not sure it feeds directly into where I play those composers' music, but it's nice. It's always nice to talk about and to tell stories and to like the composers as people, which I did. Well, Stravinsky's not the nicest man, but even he's somehow an attractive personality. And all the others, Tchaikovsky's a bit self-pitying, but he was obviously a very nice, kind man as well. And Fauré, of course, I adore. Bach, we don't know. Beethoven, I adored. Dvorak's adorable. Haydn's adorable, and so on. These are composers I wrote about for children.
How important is it to know the context?
Sometimes in Schumann, when he's quoting from another piece or something, it's quite useful to know what his little message means. But he's an unusual case. He's one of the most autobiographical of composers. I would say it's not really important to know the life story. It's just sort of inspiring to know life stories, but it's not important for interpretation.
So what would you say should be the priority in if we're talking about a music student or a young, emerging soloist, what should be the priority in their mind when there's so many different voices and potential avenues and competitions, and what should be foremost in their mind?
And talking to the composer, what should not be a priority? Social media should not be a priority. Competition should not be a priority, although I know they're a good way of, I'm not even sure they're that good a way of a few people have become famous through competitions, but very few. My little trio that we just playing at the Wigmore, Joshua Bell, Jeremy Denk, who are both doing incredibly well, and I'm sort of surviving. None of us won competitions, not major competitions. We didn't go in for them because we didn't want to. And then people say, competitions are important. I say, can you name me the winner of this or that competition from 2 years ago or 1 year ago? And they never can. I see the Violin Channel, sort of different competitions every week. So who's going to, they're just, once the next competition comes along, the previous winner is forgotten. So I don't think competitions should be, certainly not an end in themselves. Social media, as I say, I can't stand the boasting on social media. Because I was, in my 20s, I was much less successful than other British cellists, for instance. I would have been, Devs, I probably being a sort of gloomy person I am. Well, I'm not really gloomy, but neurotic anyway. I probably would have read all the things they were doing and been thoroughly envious and depressed. But then, actually, if you talk to those people who are posting these amazing things that they're doing, they're all also envious and depressed about everybody else. So I think it's I can't stand so excited about, playing here and there. I sort of think of the other young musicians who aren't playing there.
So what keeps you on that straight and narrow then? Because it's very easy to be led into the social media world or the competition world, or indeed to be told by your professor that this is a very important way of being seen by potential agents and managers. So how do you stick to your own path when it's a very noisy
It's
world?
very tricky, and there's always compromises. Always. That's just natural. Chamber music is compromises, and that's good compromises. It should be. If you're sort of on the same wavelength as your partners, It's a give and take. It's dialogue. But, I don't know, just love of music. And I think there are, unfortunately, quite a few players around who I suspect do not love music that much. And then there are some who really do, who don't particularly want careers as soloists, or they're not that ambitious. They're more interested in just making music, which I like. It's just, everybody has their own path. And some paths I prefer to others myself, but it's not my decision. Because, my use of social media just came out naturally, and I'd try not to talk about myself much, because I don't think anybody's very interested, and why should they be? But I talk about other things, about music, and, I do this thing on Twitter, as long as I'll stay on Twitter. No comment. I just lost about 300 or 400 followers in a few days, and I quite understand. But I do somebody who's been born on that day or died. I don't know. I sort of gradually got into that, and people seem to like it so much. I kept doing it. It's quite interesting for me. It takes time, and every morning, which maybe I would be better off doing something else. But it's a nice thing to do. And then I find, lots of the people I use quotes from, I don't know anything about them. But that's my own way. That's how I use social media, basically. But, you can't ignore social media. You can't, unfortunately, have a Radu Lupu now who would never do interviews, would never in his life have dreamed of using social media, Facebook or Twitter or anything. He was a true idealist. And you're unlikely to get somebody like that now. You might get the odd one, slip through the net, which is great, but it's unlikely. But just there's a way of doing it that's personal and not boasting and not just self-promoting, but actually, engaging with people. Like somebody like Joyce DiDonato. I think her career apparently has been helped massively by social media, but she uses it in such a good way. It doesn't seem as if she's boasting. She's just sort of communicating with people about music.
So the priority, you say music, but the priority is also you, is finding the you in the space around you. So
what's natural, but also what might be of interest to other people. And, both my parents are dead, so I can't think who would be interested in. I'm playing in Paris, I'm playing in Berlin or whatever. Who cares? One's parents care. But apart from that, I don't think anybody really cares. I'm much more interested to talk about music. There's so much to say about music that is interesting.
Steven Isserlis, such a treat to have you on the show. Thank you.
And you. Good to see you again.
Thanks for joining me, Jack Pepper and Steven Isserlis. And if you enjoyed our chat, there are plenty more, discussing everything from injury to work-life balance to getting playlisted by a radio station, which is less painful than it sounds. Be classically curious with the whole Classeek 15 series, available on Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, and online at classeek.com. And don't forget to follow the very latest on social media at Classeek Music. Best of luck with your music making, and hope to see you around these parts again very soon.